Dark Shadows, number 53, VTR 82466, air 9766, take one.
My name is Victoria Winters. My home is now Collinwood, a strange, brooding house where I tutor a small boy and try to teach him that ghosts are not perfectly natural visitors.
Did anything special happen last night?
Special in what way?
Heard someone screaming, didn't you?
I don't remember.
You ought to. It was you screaming.
I thought you were supposed to be sound asleep.
Well, I wasn't. I was looking out the window. I saw you and Carolyn come running up from Widow's Hill. It looked like something was chasing you.
Eat your breakfast, David.
Was something chasing you, Miss Winters?
Certainly not.
Then why were you running?
Because it was damp outside and we wanted to get back into the house.
That isn't why you screamed. Did you see a ghost?
David, I've told you there are no such things as ghosts.
Yes, there are. I've seen them.
Where?
Here at Collinwood. I like it best at night. Is that why you and Carolyn were screaming?
David, I said we did not see a ghost.
It's stupid to scream if you didn't see one.
Come on, eat your breakfast. We're late already. I wish I could sleep the way you do.
Why can't you sleep? Afraid you'll have nightmares?
No, I guess I just have too much on my mind.
Like whatever it was that made you scream last night?
You only have one thing on your mind. You're so curious, David. Why don't you go up and look in your crystal ball that Burke Devlin gave you and see if you can find the answers?
I did look in it.
And what did you find?
I told you you'd scream even louder.
Oh, I don't think I would.
Someone in Collinsport is going to try and kill you.
David, why do you say things like that?
Because that's what I see in my crystal ball.
That's enough of that. Finish your breakfast.
You know what, Miss Winters?
What?
When you're dead, I won't even come to your funeral.
David, why don't you like me?
Because.
Because what?
Because you came here to try and take my mother's place.
That's not true.
Then why did you come here?
Because I was offered a job.
You mean me?
I was offered a job to teach you your lessons. But if you won't concentrate on your homework and you keep on having these morbid thoughts about death and ghosts and widows, well, it'll all be a terrible waste.
How can I help but have thoughts about widows when they're all around me?
They're just in your imagination.
Guess my mother had the same kind of imagination. She told me what it would be like here at Collinwood.
Do you have a picture of her?
No, I did have one, but somebody stole it.
Who'd do a thing like that?
I don't know, but somebody did steal it.
Do you have any idea who it was?
Probably my father. He wants me to forget all about her.
David, you must be wrong.
They used to argue all the time.
About you?
Sometimes about me. You know, I think if it weren't for my mother, he would have sent me away.
That's not true. And your father doesn't hate you, David. He probably just doesn't understand you. You know, lots of grown-ups don't understand children.
Even when it's your own father?
I wouldn't know. See, I never knew my father.
I wish I did know Mom.
You should consider yourself very lucky to have one.
You know, if it weren't for Aunt Elizabeth, I bet he would beat me.
That's nonsense.
You don't believe what I say. Nobody believes what I say.
I believe you, David. Good morning, darling. Good morning, Miss Winters.
Good morning.
What do you want me to believe?
Nothing.
All right. I believe it. Have you seen Matthew this morning?
No, would you like me to go and call him for you?
No, it's all right. I'll walk over to his house and see if he's home.
Aunt Elizabeth, what was all the fuss about last night?
I don't know. What fuss?
I heard Miss Winters and Carolyn come running into the house.
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, it's nothing for you to be concerned about.
Did you also know that my father left the house very, very early this morning?
Ah, you do see a lot, don't you?
More than anyone thinks.
If anyone calls me, tell them I'll be right back.
Yes.
Do you like my Aunt Elizabeth?
Very much.
So do I. Almost as much as my mother.
She feels the same way about you.
If anybody tried to hurt her, I'd kill them.
David, is that all you can think about? Hurting people and killing them?
Why not? They're all trying to hurt me.
David, see who that is, will you?
Hi, David.
Hello.
Is anybody home?
I'm home. But if you mean Carolyn, she's still asleep.
Well, what about Mrs. Stoddard?
She went out for a minute.
I'll wait.
Okay.
Been seeing any more visions in that crystal ball of yours?
Plenty.
Come on, David, you don't really see anything in it, do you?
Sure I do. I told you weren't going to marry Carolyn, didn't I?
You don't believe that stuff, do you?
Sure I do. Maybe you couldn't see anything in it, but I could. It's a real, genuine crystal ball. Bert Devlin gave it to me.
Bert Devlin, huh?
He wouldn't give me anything phony.
Well, that explains a lot of things.
What's it explain?
Well, David, I think you're only seeing in that crystal ball what Mr. Devlin wants you to see. Oh, come on, David. You know, whatever Devlin tells you to see, that's what you see in that crystal ball.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, just about everything about Bert Devlin is wrong.
What's the matter with Mr. Devlin?
Oh, well, David thinks he's a god, and I think he's a devil.
Or maybe he's somewhere in between, a man.
I like it.
I'm glad to see there's something in this world you like, David. Now, how about going upstairs and starting on your lessons?
I suppose that means that you have something to talk about you don't want me to hear.
No, it doesn't. Now, go along, scoot.
I was just waiting for Mrs. Stoddard.
Well, why don't you wait in here?
I had an errand to run for my boss, and it just happened to take me past here.
Carolyn's still asleep.
Oh, Mr. Collins, too?
No, he left early this morning.
I just wondered. He didn't show up at the office. And of course, Mr. Malloy still isn't there.
He isn't?
Nope.
Hasn't anyone heard from him?
No, I don't like it.
Well, Mrs. Stoddard's gone over to Matthew's cottage. She ought to be back in a minute.
Carolyn's still sleeping, huh? Well, I guess I can wait for a little while.
You know, we had a lot of excitement here last night. Carolyn and I were out on the point, and we saw what we thought was a dead man in the water.
A dead man? What do you mean you thought you saw a dead man?
Well, it was pretty dark, and you can imagine we didn't stay around to have a good look. Anyway, Matthew went down and searched the whole shore, and he couldn't find anything except for a clump of seaweed. Well, I guess that's what we saw.
Well, what were you doing down there in the first place?
We were looking for Carolyn's watch.
She lost it?
I know you gave it to her.
Well, did you find it?
After we saw that seaweed body thing, we simply fled.
David.
Hello, Aunt Elizabeth. I was just on my way upstairs.
You know better than to listen at the door.
Was it really a dead man, Aunt Elizabeth?
Certainly not.
I imagine it was. That's what I told you. They were going out to meet death.
You've been seeing entirely too much of that sort of thing lately. What you should be seeing is your school books right now.
All right, I'm going.
Hello, Joe. What brings you here this morning? Isn't Mr. Malloy back?
No, and they're pretty worried down at the plant.
Of course, so am I. Miss Winters, why don't you go upstairs and get David started with his lessons?
Certainly.
Joe, when did you last see Mr. Malloy?
Oh, it was the day before yesterday. I stopped by the Blue Whale. Oh, maybe I shouldn't mention that.
No, that's all right. I don't care where he's been. I just want to know where he is right now.
I just don't know.
Well, wouldn't the men on the boats have any idea?
No, I've already asked. Nobody knows anything. See, Mr. Malloy always comes down to the docks in the morning to see the boats go out. Well, yesterday morning was the first time he's ever missed. And then this morning, too.
Was Mr. Collins in when you left?
I didn't see him. Well, that doesn't mean a thing. You know, my job doesn't keep me in the office all the time.
Excuse me for a moment, Joe. Carolyn's still asleep. Hello? Has Mr. Collins come in yet? I see. Well, this is Mrs. Stoddard. Ask him to call me when he comes in. Miss Winters tell you about the fright she and Carolyn had last night?
Yeah, she said something about it.
Carolyn doesn't usually sleep this late, but they didn't get to bed until all hours.
I know.
Joe, you will keep asking about Mr. Malloy, won't you?
I sure will. Well, I guess I better be getting back. I don't want the place to fall apart. You know, Mr. Malloy and me both being away.
Someday maybe you'll be just as important then.
Tell Carolyn I'll call her as soon as I get a chance, okay?
I Hello, operator. Give me the sheriff's office. Hello, George. This is Elizabeth Stoddard. I hesitate to ask you, but I'm worried about Bill Malloy.
David, do you remember what we studied yesterday? The development of transportation. What were the first highways of the world?
Rivers.
Right. And in the United States, rivers generally flow in two directions.
To the Atlantic, to the Pacific. Miss Winters, who do you suppose it was you and Carolyn saw last night?
Last night?
In the water, dead.
Were you listening downstairs?
Is that what you were screaming about?
David, you were listening when I was talking to Joe.
I couldn't help but listen to some of it. I didn't listen on purpose.
Yes, you did. And one day you're likely to hear something you wish you hadn't. It's a very bad habit. Now, what do we call the line that divides the rivers?
I don't know. How did you know the man was dead?
He wasn't. I mean, there wasn't anything there.
If he wasn't there, how could you see him?
We were mistaken. We saw a bunch of seaweed and thought it was something else.
A dead man?
David, I don't want to discuss it anymore. Now, where were we?
Continental Divide.
Right. And what is the largest river in the United States?
The Rocky Mountains. That's where the Continental Divide is. How did you know it was seaweed? Did you go down and look?
No, Matthew did.
The Mississippi.
Right. And what is the longest river in the United States?
I don't know.
It also is the name of a state. It's the Missouri. It's 5 miles longer than the Mississippi, and it empties into the Gulf of Mexico.
Did Matthew know who the dead man was?
I've already told you there wasn't a... Tell me the name of the longest river.
I don't know.
George, please don't misunderstand. It's quite likely that nothing at all has happened to Bill Malloy. But if you'll just check the hospitals in case. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Oh, Joe, I was hoping... What is it, Joe?
It's Carolyn's watch.
Oh, thank you.
Vicky told me Carolyn had lost it last night. I thought I'd just take a look around. It wasn't more than 100 yards from the house. Could you give it to her for me,
Yes,
please?
yes, of course. She'll be so pleased. You want me to wake her up?
No, she wouldn't be pleased if you did that. Well, thanks, Mrs. Dunner.
Not at all, Bob. Oh, hello. This is Mrs. Stoddard again. Has my brother come in yet? No, don't bother. I wanted to make sure. I suppose there have been a good many inquiries about Mr. Malloy? Yes, I can imagine. Well, if there are any more calls, just tell them that Mr. Malloy is out of town on business. No, I don't know when he'll be back. Thank you. Goodbye.
Rivers have played a great part in the development of the United States. Can you tell me how?
I guess they had all the water they wanted.
Well, that's true. But more important than that, they provided a means of transportation for people and for commerce. You can move almost anything by water.
Even a dead man?
David, I thought we were through with that kind of talk. I've already told you, it was just a figment of our imagination. There was no dead man.
I imagined there was. I told you. It was probably Mr. Malloy.
Oh, come in, Matthew.
Excuse me, Miss Stoddard. I got the note you left for me. Mr. Collins wanted me early. That's why I wasn't at home.
Mr. Collins, what for?
He asked me to walk along the rocks with him.
Why?
He wanted to make sure what the young ladies claimed they saw wasn't there.
Yes.
It wasn't.
That's a relief. I was beginning to wonder about that myself.
I told you that last night.
I know, but it was dark. You could have missed it.
No. I pointed out all that seaweed to Mr. Collins. There's always a lot of it torn loose after a storm. If I was you, Miss Stoddard, I'd ask your daughter to stay away from that ledge on Widder's Hill.
Well, why? It's always been a favorite place of hers since she was a little girl.
It ain't healthy. They say it was from that very spot the first Mrs. Collins jumped so long ago.
That's just a story, Matthew.
Maybe. There's another way of telling it. It could be she didn't jump of her own free will. She might have been drawn there by unnatural forces.
That's nonsense.
Is it?
David, for the last time, there was no dead man down there. You were listening at the door, so you must have heard me tell Joe it was seaweed.
Yes, but I also heard you talking about Mr. Malloy.
David, he's old enough not to have to tell people of his comings and goings.
Not anymore. I think my father killed him.
David, that's a horrible thing to say.
Is it horrible to tell the truth?
But it isn't the truth. You don't know anything about it.
I know what I saw in my crystal ball, don't I?
It's in your mind. It's not true. It's all in your imagination.
I could see the waves. I could see Mr. Malloy standing up on something. I saw my father come behind him and push him and make him fall in the water.
David, ever since I came here, you've been trying to get your father into trouble. And me, too. Why?
Why shouldn't I? You and my father have always been making trouble for me.
But you still... David, do you realize what a serious thing it is you're saying? You're saying your father killed Bill Malloy. Do you know what kind of trouble he could get into? He could be sent to prison for life.
That would suit me just fine.
Matthew, how long have you worked for me here at Collinwood?
About 18 years. Before that, I worked for your father on the boats.
And in those 18 years, I don't think you've ever told me a deliberate lie.
I never will.
When you were telling us what you saw last night, you chose your words very carefully. You said you walked from one end of the property to the other and back, and there was nothing there.
That's right.
On your return trip, there was nothing there. Was there something there when you first went down?
There was.
Was it what Carol and Miss Winters said it was?
There was a drowned man there.
Why didn't you tell me the truth?
I did. I pushed the body back into the water and watched the waves carry it back out to sea.
Did you recognize him?
It was Bill Malloy.
How could you do such a thing?
I thought it was for the best.
Did you think it was for the best to take the law into your own hands? You can't do it. Hello, operator. Give me the sheriff's office. Hello, George. This is Mrs. Stoddard. You can stop your search for Bill Malloy. I know where he is.
Peyton Place now comes your way Mondays and Wednesdays. Be sure to watch tonight here on ABC. Dark Shadows is a Dan Curtis production.